Welcome to Palo Alto's Machine Learning Next-Gen Firewall Deployment for Lab or Testing. Part 1, Initial Configuration. Before beginning the lab, please note the following. This lab assumes that you've already completed all the steps required in the activation email and you have a valid license. This lab will not cover license registration. This lab is also not a best practices guide and is meant as a way for administrators to explore different features within the next-gen firewall while maintaining a secure environment. There are some optional steps within the lab that I hope to build on in future lessons. Not completing those at this time may mean you're not able to complete those future lessons. To shorten the video, I've used accelerated footage to condense some of the longer tasks. This is noted by the stopwatch. If your task hasn't completed and you see the stopwatch, it's probably a good idea to pause the video. The lab currently uses a single firewall hosting DHCP and DNS services connected to a hub and a flat network that includes all personal devices, computers, IoTs, and a Wi-Fi bridge. Leave the current network in place, as we're going to use this to download software updates, dynamic updates, and register the licenses for the PA firewall before deployment. The desired state will be to replace the existing firewall with the Palo Alto Networks Next-Gen Firewall. We're going to create an additional zone for the Wi-Fi bridge device. We'll create a zone for the personal computers and IoT devices, and we'll connect it to the internet. We'll also include the DHCP and DNS services on the PA firewall. Welcome to Part 1, Initial Configuration. There'll be 3 follow-ups. Part 2, Device and Network Settings. Part 3, Objects and Policies. And Part 4, Deployment. Part 1, Initial Configuration. In Step 1, I'll be configuring a VM series firewall. If you're using the hardware platform, you can skip to Step 2. The lab will be the same regardless of the platform. The only exception is console access, which is dependent on your hardware, software, or container series firewall. In Step 2, we're going to configure the IP, gateway, and DNS settings for the dedicated management interface. We're going to validate that the licenses have been activated and downloaded to the appliance. And we're going to perform a software upgrade to the latest version. VM Series Deployment. VM Series is available on ESX, NSX, AWS, GCP, KVM, Hyper-V, and Azure. Download the appropriate base version from the CSP website. For this lab, I'm deploying 9.0.4 in order to show software upgrades in a future section. If you would like to skip the software upgrade later, go ahead and install the latest version. Deploy the VM to your hypervisor or public cloud. The first interface will be the dedicated management interface. Select the appropriate VM network for the management interface. Before booting the VM series firewall for the first time, we're going to need to add the 4th network adapter for the Wi-Fi zone. We're going to oversubscribe the resources to increase performance of the management plane for the purpose of a demo. We're going to select the appropriate networks for network adapter 1, which is the management interface. Adapter 2 is the internet interface. Adapter 3 will be another LAN interface or internal interface. And adapter 4 is going to be the Wi-Fi interface. Additionally, we want to make sure these adapters are not connected when we boot so that we make sure we do not have any conflicts on the network. Step 2, Management Interface Network Settings. Follow the instructions for your platform to gain console access to the next-gen firewall. Authentication to the PAN-OS console is handled by the management server. If you try to log in before the management server service is running, login will fail. Depending on the platform, The time to start the management server varies. Log in with the default username and password. On the initial login, you'll be prompted to change the admin password. On first boot, there's an auto commit task that needs to complete. If this task is not completed, you'll receive the warning stating that the admin credentials have not been changed. You can show the status of the auto commit job using the Show Jobs All command. As you can see, the job is still pending. Once the auto commit job completes, enter the configuration mode by typing configure and return. Use the displayed command to set the management IP to a static address. This IP will be for the dedicated management interface and not your default gateway. Set the management IP to any available IP address on your current network. Once you've finished the command, enter commit to save the changes. Exit configuration mode and exit the console. It's now time to connect the management interface. For physical firewalls, connect a cable to your management port. For VM or virtual firewalls, we'll need to enable the virtual NIC. For VM series, access your hypervisor and select the virtual machine. You'll need to edit the virtual NIC and make sure it's connected. Once you've enabled the management NIC or plugged in the management interface for physical firewalls, you should be able to browse to the GUI interface from the local network. When I changed my password on the initial login to the console, I received the warning that it hadn't been saved. If I try to use that new password now, as you'll see, it'll fail. Go ahead and use the default password, and it will ask you to change it again. Because the initial auto commit has now completed, this password change will be accepted. Welcome to the PanOS web console. As you'll see, there's a number of welcome notifications. You'll receive these as different updates occur. You can always dismiss these by doing do not show again. Within the GUI, you can access the management interface configuration via the Device tab, Setup, and Interfaces. If you need to change the management IP, it can be done here. DNS and NTP settings are managed under the Services tab. Let's go ahead and add some NTP servers now. After making changes, those changes need to be committed to take effect. The time for a commit to complete varies depending on platform. I've gone ahead and accelerated the commit. You may want to pause. Once you've completed the steps in the activation email, you should be able to go to the Device tab, Licenses, and retrieve licenses from server. Once the task is completed, go ahead and refresh the pane to display the active licenses. After initial license download, the management server will reboot and you'll lose connection. Just log in again. Step 4, Software Upgrades. Before deploying the firewall, you'll want to upgrade to the latest preferred release. Before starting any upgrade, make sure you have the latest dynamic updates. When accessing any of the software update pages, always make sure to click the Check Now button to download the latest releases. Download the latest Application and Threats Content Update. After the download completes, install the content update. After the application and threat content update is installed, click Check Now again to display the antivirus updates. Download the latest antivirus update. After the download completes, install the update. Next, download the wildfire updates. After the download completes, install the wildfire updates. Now go to the software updates on the left and click Check Now. Reference the support site to understand your upgrade path. For me, it's going to be going from 9.04 to the latest preferred release to 9.16 to 10.04. Upgrade to the preferred release of the current software branch. For 9.0, it's currently 9.012. Please note that after installing each of the updates, a reboot will likely be required. Reboot the appliance. Once the firewall reboots, log in again. You should be presented with upgrade information about the current release. You can confirm the version via the dashboard and the version list under General Information. Return to the software update page and click Check Now. Whenever upgrading versions, it's always required to download the base as well as the preferred release. My next upgrade step is 9.16, so I'm going to download the 9.10 base as well as the 9.16 software. It is not necessary to install both 9.10 and 9.16. Once the 9.16 download completes, click Install. Review any warnings about the upgrade, click OK, update, and then reboot the appliance. After the reboot, on first login, you'll be presented with the 9.1 welcome screen. Return to the Device tab and Software Update and click Check Now. Now that we're on 9.1, options for 10.0 should be displayed. Download the 10.0 base version as well as the 10.0.4 software. Again, it's not necessary to install the base software. You only need to install the preferred release. So once 10.04 completes downloading, go ahead and install and reboot the appliance. Welcome to PanOS 10.0.4. While the colors have changed, the menus and options are all the same within the panorama and firewall consoles. Review the 10.0 welcome message for any actions that are required after installation. We're going to perform a little bit of cleanup, return to the device and software page, and delete the older software. So anything 9.1 and below, you can remove. Once any unnecessary software has been deleted, go to the Dynamic Updates page, and we're going to schedule updates for each of these signatures. Because this is a lab environment, I'm only setting the antivirus updates for daily. In a production environment, this may be something you might want to set to every hour. Again, because this is a lab, I'm only scheduling the update for every day. In a production environment, you might check application and threats more frequently, such as every 30 minutes or every hour. If you plan on testing Global Protect VPN, the firewall can host the Global Protect client software. The schedule for updating the software can be set to a much less frequent schedule, like weekly. The final scheduled update to configure will be Wildfire. In the latest releases of PAN-OS, Wildfire now supports real-time. Go ahead and select real-time, click OK. Go ahead and click Commit to save the scheduled changes. This completes Part 1 initial configuration. You should now have a Palo Alto Next-Gen Firewall running the latest software with a configured management interface. You're now ready to move on to Part 2.